Hi, my name is Dr. Kerry Kriger. I am the founder and executive director of Save the Frogs, and I spent about 4 years in Australia researching amphibians for my PhD program, which I did at Griffith University in Gold Coast, and I spent a lot of time out in southeast Queensland looking for frogs and especially investigating the Chytrid fungus, and I'm going to try my best to answer a few questions for you all. First one is, what is the Chytrid fungus and why is it so detrimental to amphibians? The Chytrid fungus has been causing lots of problems around the world for amphibians, and the one in particular we're referring to is Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis. And this Chytrid fungus is a big problem for amphibians. It causes a skin disease that's potentially lethal. The disease is called chytridiomycosis. And it will infect an amphibian. It spreads easily because it's on their skin, and it's got waterborne zoospores. Amphibians spend a lot of time in the water, and they're often touching each other when they fight or mate. And so they're easily spreading the Chytrid fungus from one frog to another. And another problem is that humans ship about 100 million amphibians around the world each year for use as pets, food, bait, laboratories, and zoos. So we're shipping sick amphibians around the world. And the next question is, what's being done conservation-wise to control or eradicate the Chytrid fungus and save the Fleay's barred frog? Australia banned the importation of amphibians 10 or 15 years ago, except for valid scientific purposes. So that was a huge step, but unfortunately there's no other country in the world that has done that except perhaps New Zealand. In America, it's completely legal to import chytrid-infected frogs into the country. And actually, 3 days ago, Save the Frogs, along with the Center for Biological Diversity, submitted a petition to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to ban the importation of all salamanders unless certified free of Batrachochytrium salamandivorans, which is a recently discovered relative of the Chytrid fungus Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis. This newly discovered Chytrid fungus infects only salamanders as far as we can tell. Actually, about 5 years ago, there was also a petition submitted that we supported to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to ban all amphibians from entering the country and from crossing state lines unless shown to be free of Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis, but the Fish and Wildlife Service has never responded to that petition. In California, we're working with politicians. We got laws in place in the city and county of Santa Cruz to ban the importation of American bullfrogs, which are the most commonly imported food species. A few million bullfrogs enter California each year. We're working with the state to get laws in place to ban their importation. What I find is that anytime, at least in America, working with politicians to get laws in place on behalf of frogs, especially when it affects businesses, people who make money off of the sale of frogs, is very difficult. And what's being done to save the Fleay's barred frog? I'm not too up to date with Fleay's barred frog work, as I have not been doing amphibian work in Australia in at least 5 years. One good thing, though, is that Fleay's barred frogs tend to live in rainforests, and most rainforest in Australia is protected. So most of them are protected from habitat destruction, though, of course, Chytrid fungus can cross boundaries regardless of whether it's a national park or not. And yeah, I suggest contacting researchers at Griffith University in Gold Coast or in northeast New South Wales to see what's currently going on for the Fleay's barred frog. You could also contact the Department of Environment in Queensland. Why are frogs so important in ecosystems, and what role do they play? Frogs are really important because they're controlling insects and pest species that are spreading diseases that we don't want. And we also get a lot of benefit from amphibians. Tadpoles are filtering algae out of water. A lot of us are dependent on water from a community filtration system. So tadpoles are doing a lot of that work for us, keeping our cost of water down. They're an important food source for a lot of other animals, such as snakes, birds, fish. Lots of animals eat and depend on frogs, eggs, and tadpoles. So if frogs disappear, other animal species can have trouble as well. And a lot of our medicines come from research that's done on amphibians. 10% of Nobel Prizes in physiology and medicine have gone to researchers whose work depended on amphibians. So if an amphibian species disappears, such as the northern and southern gastric brooding frogs, which lived in southeast Queensland and up in Yungala National Park, but unfortunately went extinct within a year of being discovered by scientists. When species disappear, we lose potential benefits to humans. Those species could swallow their young and shut down their stomach as their eggs and tadpoles grew inside of the mother's stomach, and then she would spit out the young. And it was thought that because they could control their gastric juices, that research into those species would lead to a cure for ulcers, but unfortunately both those species are now extinct, likely due to Chytrid fungus arriving. Chytrid fungus, first record that I know of in all of Australia, is actually from southeast Queensland in 1979. Why is it so important that we save frogs, and what would be the consequences if they were to go extinct? Well, I just mentioned a lot of the reasons why it's important to save frogs. It's also important because people like frogs, and the more that we destroy nature, the further disconnected people get from nature, and the less likely, the less willing they are to save it, and it would create a bad negative feedback loop. The worse our environment gets, the less people want to protect it. So that's a good reason to save frogs. Kids love frogs. People love frogs. Obviously, all of you do. And saving frogs is a great way to save the environment in general. When we save the frogs, we are protecting lots of other species as well. What would be the consequences if they were to go extinct? We've never had, at least in recent times, any class of animals go completely extinct. So we really don't know what would happen. And I assume it would be quite bad because amphibians have been around for hundreds of millions of years. Our ecosystems have evolved to have amphibians as a part of the ecosystem. They play an important role. They constitute a lot of the vertebrate biomass and therefore the functioning of the ecosystems, and hopefully we won't have to find out what would happen if all amphibians go extinct. We've already had well over 100 species go extinct in recent times. There's a couple thousand species that are endangered, which implies that if we don't do anything to protect them, that they will go extinct in the near future. So I thank all of you for helping save the frogs. Please go check out our website, savethefrogs.com. And we also have a page all about the Chytrid fungus, savethefrogs.com/Chytrid. That's Chytrid. And thank you for your efforts on behalf of the environment.